This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you click on the link in the description below, it'll take you to their store and they'll know I sent you there. Hi everyone, I'm Nitsa Home, and it's Friday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. In today's video, we're going to take a look at one of Magic's most powerful mechanics ever, Delve. As a mechanic, it allows you to pay an alternate cost for cards, as you can exile cards from your graveyard when you cast a card with Delve, and if you do, each card you exile reduces the cost of the spell by 1 generic mana. It originally debuted in 2007's Future Sight, a set that had a whole bunch of potential future mechanics in it, with Delve appearing on 3 cards in the set. And it turned out that Future Sight did predict the future in this case, because Delve made a return in 2014's Khans of Tarkir as the Sultai mechanic, and since then, it has also appeared in non-standard release sets like Modern Horizons. Cost reduction effects and graveyard-related mechanics have always been super powerful in Magic, and Delve is both of those things. In decks that are good at loading up the graveyard, it is incredibly powerful. In fact, when I did a video on the 10 best mechanics back in 2019, it came in at number 1. Now, the criteria for that video was based on the percentage of cards with the mechanic that have been played at Magic's highest level, as well as the average number of points per card, and suffice it to say, Delve performed quite well using those parameters. While I do need to update that video in the future, the fact still remains that Delve is crazy good. There are 25 cards that have it, and 13 of them have at least 1 point, and despite the fact that it has only appeared on a few cards, this list is really stacked. The top 7 cards on it all have 40 or more points. In this video, we'll look at the 10 Delve cards that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A top 8 at a Pro Tour, Players Tour, Mythic Championship, Mythic Invitational, Legacy, or Vintage Championship is worth 2 points, and a top 8 at a Magic Fest or Grand Prix is worth 1 point. At number 10, it is Tombstalker, one of the Future Sight Delve cards. This big demon would be terrible if it was always 8 mana, but like with all Delve cards, if you have good ways to load up your graveyard, you can play this very efficiently, and it's a pretty big threat when you can. 2 mana for a 5/5 flyer, for example, is great. It has gained points across multiple formats and always in graveyard decks that could really abuse it. In Block, it was played in Mystical Teaching, in Standard, it was played in the Rock, and in Extended, it was played in Dredge. It has found the most success in Legacy, though, where it has frequently been played in Delver and Threshold decks. It doesn't have any points since 2018. At number 9, it is Hooting Mandrels, another Delve creature. While perhaps not as imposing as Tombstalker, Hooting Mandrels can have its cost reduced all the way down to a single green mana, and that's a great deal for a 4/4. It didn't do anything super impressive in Standard, as reducing the cost wasn't easy enough, but in each of the non-rotating formats, it has found some modest success. It's been played in Modern Death Shadow, and in Delver and Threshold decks in Legacy, and in Survival of the Fittest decks in Vintage. It doesn't have any points since 2019. At number 8, we have a combat trick with Delve, and that's Become Immense, which in most decks that play it is effectively 1 green mana for +6/+6, which is a pretty great deal. At the beginning of its time in Standard, it saw play in decks like Green-White Heroic, but its primary home there would be Gruul aggro decks, which were playing creatures, tons of cheap instants and sorceries, and creatures with prowess. All of that combos really well with Become Immense. After it was printed, it almost immediately saw play in Modern Infect, since the deck already runs tons of cheap spells, and giving your Infect creatures such a huge boost for 1 mana is a good way to just end the game. It has also been played in some versions of Death's Shadow, a deck that looked to pretty much one-shot the opponent with the eponymous creature, and that combo often involved both Become Immense and Temur Battle Rage. While Death's Shadow decks have largely moved away from that particular plan, Become Immense is still played in Infect decks, and while it doesn't have any points since 2019, it wouldn't be too shocking to see it add to its score. At number 7, it is Logic Knot. Like Tombstalker, it is one of the Future Sight cards with Delve. Of the 3 Future Sight cards with the mechanic, 2 of them are on this list, so even from the beginning, Delve was quite successful. Anyway, Logic Knot is a counterspell and an X spell, which means you can use your whole graveyard to help pay for X if you want to. Being able to leave up only 2 mana to counter just about anything is quite good, and not something very many cards in Modern can do. Well, at least that was true before Counterspell was printed in Modern Horizons 2. Logic Knot has been played primarily in Modern control decks, especially in Blue-White and Jeskai control. In addition to its significant Modern success, it also picked up a lone extended Pro Tour top 8 in a Grixis control deck. The advent of Counterspell in Modern may end up hindering its ability to continue to find success in the format, so we'll see. At number 6, it is Hogaak, Arisen Necropolis, a rather infamous card from Magic's recent past. Hogaak has a pretty cool design, but also one that should have given R&D playtesters a few red flags. It has 2 abilities that help reduce the cost of the card between Convoke and Delve, and the latter ability has proven to be busted on numerous occasions. But hey, in Modern Horizons, they wanted to have fun with designing super strong cards that could make an incredible impact on Modern, so I guess they kind of succeeded here. Except that Hogaak ended up being completely insane. It's way too easy to rapidly load the graveyard in Modern, and this led to Hogaak coming down insanely early, like on turn 2, with regularity. Hogaak was only legal in Modern for 2 months before it got banned. Hogaak has been powerful enough to continue to put up points in the Eternal formats though. He has found significant success in Legacy Dredge decks, and in Vintage it has been utilized in Dredge decks too, but its primary home of late has been the Bazaar of Baghdad aggro deck. A deck loaded up with discard and draw effects like the Bazaar that intends to then rapidly populate the board with creatures who can come out of the graveyard or who have casting costs of 0 as a result of all the cards that you discarded. In that deck, it isn't unusual for Hogaak to come down on turn 1 alongside several other creatures. Hogaak is going to continue to amass points in both Legacy and Vintage, and it's the first card we've encountered on this list who has a really good chance to continue to improve its score. At number 5, it is Gurmag Angler, a French vanilla delve creature that can potentially be a 1-mana 5/5. In standard decks couldn't decrease its cost quickly enough, so the Angler has no points there, but in Modern and Legacy it has seen some significant play. In Modern it was played in decks like Death's Shadow and Hollow One, both of which already have a game plan that involves throwing things in your graveyard, and in Legacy it's mostly been played in Grixis Delver. It doesn't have any points since 2019. It was seriously displaced by the arrival of Hogaak, especially in Legacy. At number 4, it is Murderous Cut, a removal spell with Delve. Unlike most of the cards on this list, Murderous Cut was played in Standard, and not just played, but pretty much a staple in Black decks. It had a lower cost than most of the other cards we've looked at, and just being able to reduce the cost to 3 or so was a good deal, and that's not so true of the other Delve cards we've seen so far. In addition to amassing 92 points in Standard, it's also found some more limited success in Modern, Legacy, and Vintage. At number 3, it is Tasigur the Golden Fang. Like Hooting Mandrels and Gurmag Angler, Tasigur can be a highly efficient creature if you can load your graveyard, but there's more going on here. He also has a pretty sweet activated ability that helps you load up your graveyard while also giving you back a card from it. Your opponent does get to choose the card, but at least it's a non-land, so you'll be getting something real most of the time, while also reloading the graveyard that Tasigur probably consumed. Unsurprisingly, Tasigur has been good in graveyard decks across every format he's ever been legal in. In Standard, he gained most of his points in Abzan decks, and all of his non-standard points have come in graveyard-heavy decks like Dimir Inverter in Pioneer, and Hollow One and Death's Shadow in Modern. At number 2, it is Treasure Cruise. While this might look expensive, in some decks it feels like a sorcery speed Ancestral Recall, and that's insane. Now, it wasn't close to that powerful in Standard, but it was still a pretty nice way to draw cards there. However, it did prove to be way too good in Modern and Legacy, where it was outright banned in January of 2015, and even for Vintage, where it was restricted in the same announcement. It was just way too easy to load up the graveyard in those formats and cast this incredibly cheaply early on, and it made blue decks in those formats far too dominant. Despite those bannings hampering its score to some extent, it is still gaining points in Vintage, where the single copy is played in many blue decks. It will keep gaining points in Vintage going forward. And at number 1, it is Dig Through Time, which like Treasure Cruise is a Delve draw spell that got banned in multiple formats. Paying 2 blue mana for some amazing card selection and card advantage is amazing. Dig Through Time has been banned in both Modern and Legacy, and it's restricted in Vintage as a result of all this power. Despite having its score suppressed by those bannings, Dig Through Time still has an impressive 230 points. Now, in Standard, Dig Through Time wasn't completely busted, it was merely really good there. In Modern, it managed 2 points before getting banned. There, it was played in Scape Shift since it could help you find what you needed to combo off. It was also a key card in Legacy for the brief time it was legal there, making Delver and Miracle decks even better than they already were. It has also already amassed 22 points in the fairly new Pioneer format, where it's been played in Dimir Inverter and Lotus Breach combo decks, as it does a great job of helping you dig for your combo pieces, and both of those decks like to load the graveyard. Despite being restricted in Vintage, Dig Through Time still has a massive number of points in the format, with pretty much every blue deck in the format running the singleton copy they're allowed. Dig Through Time is pretty consistently putting up points, and it would be a little surprising to ever see it relinquish its number 1 spot on this list. Well, those are the 10 cards with Delve that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. If you want to own any of them, you can find direct links for each of them that will take you to the Card Kingdom store in the description. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you're looking for more of my videos, you should see a bunch of them in playlists on your screen shortly. And lastly, if you like hearing me talk about Magic, consider subscribing to my other YouTube channel where I talk about real-world history. Thanks for watching.